Hey, what's going on, you guys? It's Jajai Binks, or some of you know me as Kronos in game. I'm just doing a quick tutorial on the Power Berserker today. So, the Power Berserker, some people know it as the Burstzerker, is probably one of the highest DPS specs available in the game right now. Probably like it's on comparable levels with Rev, DH, Core Guard, depending on what type of engages you're getting into. What I would say about this class is that it very much favors melee engages, so if you're not playing a melee heavy group, you might not always get as much value out of this. But this spec is very good at generating and confirming downs. It just creates a ton of damage pressure. That's pretty much all it does. There isn't massive CC components to it or anything like that, but it puts out big numbers, and if you're playing it properly and if your like comp is running a lot of melee pushes and stuff like that, you're going to be topping that damage chart pretty frequently on this build. Okay, so Berserker. So for the Berserker, you're always going to be running Strength, Discipline, and Berserker. This spec is simply focused on layering as many compounding damage modifiers as possible. And for the gear on this, you're going to be running full Berserker, or maybe you can go for Marauders as well. Just depends on what sort of damage pressure you're dealing with. I can run it pretty comfortably on full Berserker, but if you're finding that you're dying a little bit too much to rings and stuff like that, definitely try it on Marauders. You're still going to be doing plenty of damage. As far as the rune sets that you'd be running, you do have a couple of options. General like DPS specs work really well, like DPS runes work well here. I run Strength because you pretty much always have Might on this build, but you can also run Scholars, you can also run Eagles, Rage. You can even run like Vampirism because you do a really good job of confirming downs. You'll get a lot of health generation out of that if you run that rune set as well. And then for the weapons that you're going to be running, there's two like kind of prevalent options that you'll see out there. You'll see some people will be running axe, and technically speaking, if you're able to get into melee consistently, that is you're going to be topping damage even more so if you're running axe. However, if you're not running like a thick blob where you're able to just melee push like crazy, you might not get as much value out of it. Or if you're fighting another group where they're going to punish you for doing a lot of melee engages. If you're doing a lot more range spikes and stuff like that, I would recommend running the longbow variant. I don't think I have the right sigils on mine right now. I do run Bloodlust, but I'd recommend probably Force and Bloodlust. Is what I would recommend for this. I just have it on Blood here just because I was using my Force on my axe earlier. But that would be my recommendation. So you're always going to run Greatsword. Greatsword is just an amazing warrior weapon in general, and on Berserker, you're going to see you get a ton of value out of it. And then for your second weapon set, you're going to be running Longbow or Axe. Axe is your other option there. Both are great. Axe has better single target pressure and also better down pressure, but Longbow allows you to generate adrenaline at range, and also the burst skill on it. So for anybody that's never played Berserker before, you fill up your adrenaline bars just like you would on a normal warrior, but what happens is once this fills up, you'll proc your Berserk, and then once you're in your Berserk, your burst skill will actually change to something new. So the Greatsword one is Arc Divider. That skill hits like an absolute truck. And then for the Longbow here, you get I believe it's called Scorched Earth. Let me just find it here. Scorched Earth, yeah. And what it does is it kind of acts like a dragon banner. For anybody that's seen those before, you'll see a line of squares that light up on the ground in front of you. Each of those will pulse damage, and each of those squares has their own target cap. So you can actually, I believe it's 5 squares, and each hits up to 5 targets, consistently pulsing for damage. So you technically have a target cap of 25 people when you're using that longbow burst. So it is very handy for pulsing consistent damage on, say, a wall or on in SMC hallways or something like that. It's great for that, and you're going to be able to get adrenaline outside of melee engages that way. So for the actual build itself, Strength, Discipline, Berserker, and you're pretty much running all of the compounding damage buffs you can run. Like, this is really, this build has tons of stacking damage modifiers. So starting off with peak performance, you're just dealing increased 3% strike damage while you're running this. There's also a physical skills caveat to this as well, which I'll touch on when I'm talking about the variant utility skills. The very traditional meta way of running this doesn't have any physical skills on it, but there is a couple of variants that might run that. You're running Forceful Greatsword in your second trait line for strength, and that's for that increased power, for the recharge reduction on your Greatsword skills, as well as the might generation that you're going to get every single time you're critting on Greatsword, or every 50% of the time, rather. And that's great if you're running those strength runes. You're going to be able to get a passive 5% damage modifier pretty much all the time when you're running this trait line. And then for your final slot here, you're running Berserker's Power, and what this does is it gives you increased strike damage when you use a burst skill. And that's when you're proccing it, so whenever you actually hit targets, you're going to get this stacking adrenaline damage modifier, and it's 7% per stack, and you can have up to 3, so that's a 21% damage increase, which is huge. The one thing I will mention for this trait line in particular, when you actually get into Berserk, whenever you use your burst skill, even though it takes up the entire bar here, it's actually one solid bar, so it only counts as one stage of adrenaline here. So what you want to do to actually get as much damage stacked as possible, you actually want to make sure, because the way we're traded, you're doing damage when you go into Berserk, you actually want to activate Berserk when you get into melee combat. So you can actually hit 3 targets with this right away, so that way you, right out of the gate of getting into Berserk, have that stacking 21% damage modifier. In the Discipline line, you're getting an increased 25% movement speed from Warrior Sprint. You're also dealing increased damage whenever you have Swiftness, which you'll see you get pretty often on this build. And you're also able to remove a mob using your Greatsword 3 and Greatsword 5 skills. You also have Destruction of the Empowered, and this is a compounding increase of 3% strike damage increase per boon on your target, which with the current boon ball meta of Firebrand and Scrapper means you're getting a lot of increased damage. You're getting a lot of value out of this. And then the last trait that you're running here is Burst Mastery. And Burst Mastery increases the damage you're doing on your burst skills, more of that compounding damage, as well as it's giving you back some of your adrenaline so you can burst again quicker, and you're getting Swiftness, which increases your strike damage because of Warrior Sprint. And then finally, in the Berserker trait line, you're running the top skills for each of these, and you're doing this, you're getting an increased Berserk mode duration here, because really most of your damage is coming when you're in Berserk, and you want to be getting off as many burst skills as possible during that time, so more time in Berserk is great. You also have Blood Reaction, which is going to give you bonus ferocity based on your precision, and this is increased further when you go into Berserk mode. And because of this, gear that gives you increased precision is like increased crit chance is super beneficial when you're running this line, so you can actually get back, because Marauders actually gives you more precision than it does ferocity. You can actually get back some of the kind of lost damage you get from running that trait line. So play test both for yourself and just see which one's more comfortable. And then finally, you are getting increased strike damage while in Berserk mode because of Bloody Roar. So all of these, it's just compounding damage across the board. This is really great for you as far as just the amount of things that are stacking on top of each other here means you're going to be pumping out a lot of damage with this spec. As for the utility skills you're running on Power Berserker, you're going to be running, this is like the meta setup here, and I'll kind of briefly touch on the variants, but you're running Blood Reckoning as your healing, and this heals you, gives you adrenaline, and also gets rid of the recharge on your burst skills, your primal burst skills. So really what you want to be doing is you want to be using this once you're actually in Berserk mode. And that's because you're going to be getting your burst skill back right away as soon as you use it. You're also getting some of the damage you're doing back as healing, so you're going to be healing, doing personal healing on for those like 5 seconds. You're going to be getting tons of HP back, which means you can just keep pouring on the damage. And also it increases your Berserk duration once you're actually, if you're actually in Berserk. So you're getting an extra 5 seconds in there, which is great. It's just more time to do damage. Signet of Fury is increased precision for you, but the real reason you're running it is because the active skill gives you precision, ferocity, and also gives you enough adrenaline that if you're in combat, you'll be able to get into Berserk right away. If you are not in combat, like if you're coming out of a stealth bomb, you want to make sure that you're pairing this with a Berserker stance, because this is going to pulse adrenaline gain for you, and these two combined will give you enough adrenaline to be able to get off Berserk, even out of combat. If you just try and pop this by itself out of combat to try and get into Berserk, you're actually, because you lose adrenaline while out of combat, you actually won't be able to consistently get this off. You won't consistently be able to get off your Berserk stance straight out of Fury without that Berserker stance. But if you're in combat already, you can just pop this, and this will guarantee you have enough adrenaline to get into Berserk. For our stun break here, we run balanced stance, and this is because you get pulsing stability, you get pulsing swiftness, which is going to give you that damage increase, and you get immunity to critical hits, which is great because you actually lose toughness while you're in Berserker. You actually lose 300 toughness, so this kind of helps you stay alive. There is other stun breaks that are available to you. I think probably the one I'd look at the most, I mean, Shake It Off's great because it's an ammo skill, but I think you could look at running Outrage if you want to get increased, increased time in Berserk stance, or you can run Stomp as well. And this will remove a MO from you. It's a CC skill, it's a blast finisher, it gives you stability, it's a stun break, and it gives you a passive 7% damage modifier for a few seconds after using it, because of how we're traded with peak performance there. And then the final skill that we're running here is Battle Standard. This is your elite. You can run Signet of Rage to get more adrenaline gain out of combat, or sorry, like in combat but out of melee. This will just allow you to keep pulsing and keep up that adrenaline so you're ready to go for that melee engage. And you can also activate it to get all those compounding damage buffs. But Battle Standard is very strong. What it does is it's a group AoE. It's a group AoE res. So you can use it, and you can res an entire subgroup of 5 players with it, which is crazy. It's also able to stomp multiple enemies. So this skill in general can like win you rally wars, no problem. It's really good for that. As well as it pulses boons for you and allies, which is super great because you actually don't have a consistent Fury source on this build. Most of your Fury is going to be coming from your Firebrand and your Herald, and the only skill that is going to give you Fury outside of that on this build is Axe 2 if you're running the Axe variant. So really this is your only Fury source available to you other than through your allies, so you're going to be very reliant on your allies most of the time. The other thing I just bear in mind is to make sure that you're actually picking up this Battle Standard before it disappears after those 60 seconds, because then you're going to get a recharge reduction of 60 seconds on it. So it's just very handy for that. So just make sure that you're, because you want to be using this as frequently as possible and it has such a long recharge, you want to be picking this up always before it ends, so that way you're getting a recharge reduction on the skill for your next time. Okay, so for the actual bursts, you're going to be doing this. So as I said before, you want to be getting off as many burst skills as possible while in Berserk. So I'm going to do an example of what your burst might look like. I'm going to be doing it from out of combat here. We'll pretend it's like a stealth bomb or something. So I'm going to use Berserker stance and I'm going to use Signet of Fury. But generally, if you were in combat, what you would do is you would proc Signet of Fury. That would get your adrenaline bar all the way filled here. Then you would go into Berserk, and then once you are in Berserk, you're going to be using your Arc Divider right away with your Greatsword, and you want to be making sure you're actually activating Berserk once you get into melee range. So it would be Signet of Fury, Berserk, Arc Divider. Then you're going to use Blood Reckoning, so you get personal heals, you get adrenaline back, and you also have your Arc Divider immediately recharged. Then you're going to go back into Arc Divider, and then you can either like get off 100 blades if there's actually a chance you're going to connect a whole bunch of them, or you can go immediately into Longbow, and you can use your burst skill in there and then like filler with like Longbow too. So that's what that burst is going to be looking like. And for anybody that's never played with like warrior weapons before, whirlwind attack and rush are your two skills that are great for movement, repositioning, and will remove a mob from you. You can use rush to get to the front of your group to like get off that first hit or to like back away from an engage. Whirlwind is going to be it removes a mob, it will hit multiple targets, and if you can chain all of the attacks on a single target, either because they're moving or because they're like stuck in a wall or something and you're able to whirlwind into the wall, you're going to do a significant amount of damage with it, but it's also evade frames for you, which is great. 100 Blades hits a whole bunch of times. It's going to generate a lot of adrenaline for you, and you just want to be making sure that you're using it somewhere where you're going to get all of the attacks to hit. So either there's a single target that's like stunned on a spot, or they're downed and you're like cleaving them a ton, or you're like right in the middle of an enemy Zerg, and even as targets move on, you're going to cleave a lot of people with it. Greatsword 4 is just a pressure tool for you. You can just use it to get more adrenaline out of combat, or like out of melee. And then Longbow, most of your damage time is going to be coming partially from your auto attack, but Longbow 2 up close, it will burst on a single target and it pierces, so it's going to hit multiple targets for adrenaline gain. Longbow 3 is AoE and it's ground targeted, so if you can make sure that the projectile itself doesn't get blocked, this will hit multiple targets for adrenaline gain. And then your big thing that you're going to be getting out of Longbow is actually that burst skill. So I'll kind of show what this all looks like here. So let's pretend we're coming from stealth. So I'm gonna move forward here. Let's say we've buffed Berserker, using that signet, going into Berserk. Arc Divider, using Blood Reckoning, Arc Divider, I might 100 Blades at this point. I might use that Longbow Burst, which is now going to pulse damage, which is great. Might go back into Greatsword to get off another Arc Divider. Just using as many of these filler skills as possible. Ooh. I didn't get enough adrenaline there, but I might have been able to get off one more burst there, which would have been great. Now I'll show you it one more time, and just really pay attention to the numbers. I'm going to do it with battle standards, that way I actually have Fury on the engage. But since we're in combat right now, I can also use my Signet of Fury, and that will be enough to get me into Berserk. So I'm going to do a full send melee engage here. So normally you wouldn't use battle standard for this, but I'm just using it because I want the Fury. So you can see, like, look at, that's like a 20k on a keyboard right there. So that's like, you're getting huge damage out of this spell. And you are very consistently going to be popping your damage deals with this. So I'm just going to wait till my Berserk comes back, and I'm going to do one more big burst with this. You want to be using your heal off of cooldown whenever you do this as well. And that's pretty much it, you guys. Like, there isn't anything crazy going on with Berserk. You just want to be getting off as many burst skills as you can. Test out the Axe variant, test out the Longbow variant, figure out which works better for your commanders and your Zergs, because some groups will melee push a lot and some won't melee push as much. So just play test both for yourself and see which one works better. And I think that's pretty much it. Again, not really a lot going on with Berserker, like from a crazy mechanical standpoint. It's just about getting off as many of those bursts as possible. And you know, experiment a little bit with like mixing up your stun breaks. Instead of running Berserk stance, maybe, or sorry, instead of running balance stance, maybe try running one of these Berserk skills to increase your Berserk duration. Or like look at other options out there, you guys. Like always experiment for yourself, figure out what works best. I really would recommend this trait line for the compounding damage, but test out the weapons, test out the utilities, and see what works for you. Other than that, I think I'm probably gonna do Necro next week. So just keep an eye out for that. And other than that, hope you guys have a good rest to your day. See you later.